So just settling in our own way just for a few moments. Allowing ourselves to arrive back into the space. Perhaps just connecting to the breath. Aware of the body resting here. Just that pause to be with whatever's here right now. So in this session then, I'd like to share with you some information around equanimity, the Pali word being upeksha. And what I would like to start by doing is just sharing a few paragraphs, pulling the 4 limitless contemplations together like Angie talked about a moment ago. And then we'll go into a little bit around what equanimity is, how to keep it at the forefront of our minds in life, and we'll do a practice afterwards with usual sharing. So the 4 limitless contemplations that Angie mentioned earlier, loving kindness, compassion, joy, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, also called the 4 Brahma Viharas, have been very much something I've been working on for a number of years now, and have really been practicing and keeping very close to my heart, and have very much needed in the last few weeks actually. There's a lovely saying by a Tibetan teacher, Longchenpa, and Longchenpa described the 4 Brahma Viharas in this way: out of the soil of friendliness grows the beautiful bloom of compassion, watered by the tears of joy, sheltered beneath the cool tree of equanimity. And I just think that's a lovely way of pulling the 4 of them together, actually. So, of course, when we're looking at loving kindness, we're standing really close to the events in our lives with as much friendliness and loving kindness as possible. And compassion also teaches us, like Christine was mentioning earlier, that we can turn towards what's going on in our own lives and other people's lives, the difficulties, the distresses. Can we be with those and turn towards those with an unshakable commitment to relieve suffering and the causes of the suffering that we and others experience? And joy is needed very much in life, actually, to soften the pain of what we experience. And Angie's just talked very well about that. So equanimity is an understanding that means we can stand in the midst of everything, potentially with unshakable balance. To be responsive to whatever's happening and not broken by it, even in the most difficult. So I see these 4 qualities, and we're talking about equanimity, but I see these 4 qualities as something that I will spend my life working with. It isn't something I'm going to just practice and it'll be sorted, but it's something that continually needs to be worked on in life, and particularly, I would say, through the highs and lows. So they all balance each other out and provide great support, particularly in challenge. And they also nourish us. And we often need to be reminded, you know, as Angie said earlier, we need to be reminded of these teachings, of the practices, particularly when life is difficult. Christina Feldman, who has written the book, The Boundless Heart, and I've taken some of my information from there today, along with other sources, she would say that equanimity makes all of the other three possible. So it's fundamental to balance in life. So equanimity is the capacity to bring a steady and balanced mind to whatever we discover within our experience, within our practice, when we sit down and practice mindfulness, whatever we're facing in our day-to-day lives. Is it possible to bring a capacity of a steady and balanced mind? And, you know, this is a big ask. And this is why we need mindfulness to help us be with what is here and to then work with holding that with balance. So equanimity is an invitation to feel more deeply and objectively, to be able to witness this roller coaster of life that we all experience, and, you know, step off the roller coaster, step off the hamster wheel, as Faye was talking about this morning, to, you know, enjoy the everyday things, the wonderful everyday things in life. So can we step off this roller coaster and be compassionate and objective around what's going on in life? So that involves attending to strong emotions, for example, such as fear, anger, grief, sadness, whatever strong emotions flow. Can we witness them rather than them being thrown by them? And we're not pushing anything away. We're bringing mindful presence to what's here, but in a more balanced way, if at all possible. And I've been listening to Tara Brach a lot over the last wee while, whilst lying in bed, feeling really rough. It's lovely to have Dharma to listen to and lots of wise words. And she often talks about remembering that you are the ocean, and strong waves of fear and strong waves of anger can really get a grip on us. But can we remember in those moments that we can be the ocean? And through our practice, we realize we can ride the wave of that strong emotion, and, you know, be much more of a wider and bigger picture, because sometimes it all gets very narrow, particularly in difficult times. And Viktor Frankl said, and it's a quote we all know very well, in between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And that space is your power and freedom. And I remember Christine mentioning that, I think last night, if I remember correctly, the importance of the pause and the power of that pause and the space that we create in life through our practice. It's really, really valuable in times when we're dealing with strong emotion, for example. So when we look up the word equanimity or upeksha, it has a number of different translations, and here are some of them. The translations can be to look over, to be the guardian of, to see with patience, and to stand in the middle of life with poise and balance. And some would say it's a spacious stillness of the heart. And I think of the mountain meditation, which we will do shortly actually as our practice. But whenever we climb a mountain or a hill, we get to see the vast view of everything. So I'm not far from Edinburgh, and when I climb Arthur's Seat, it's not a mountain, of course, but you get to see the whole of Edinburgh with the beautiful elements of Edinburgh and also the rundown elements of Edinburgh, and we get to see it all. And can we see that with balance and with poise? So equanimity isn't a state as such, but it's a relational way of being in the world. And it's about understanding that life is constantly changing, as has already been said this weekend, that life is unpredictable, as we know when we have to face difficulty that's unexpected in life. So, we can't predict what the difficulties might be, and sometimes we can't predict the joys either. We have to really work towards being, where possible, in life with as much mindful awareness and loving kindness and compassion as possible, and holding it all in a balanced way where possible. And COVID for me has taught me that life came to a sudden standstill. Absolutely everything got cancelled, and I was forced to spend a lot of time resting and in bed. And you can't control suddenly when things like COVID hit you. But what you can, and what I have learned to work with, is the being with what's here, with as much kindness as I can and as much compassion to my suffering, knowing I'm not alone with that suffering, but also still being able to get in touch with the joys even when I feel dreadful. There are still joys to be had. For example, just being able to breathe can be one of the simplest joys to be with in times of difficulty. And I don't think I've ever spent as much time as the last 2 weeks breathing mindfully. It's powerful. And actually, it can be a joy to be with the breath. So, yeah, we can't control life and what life brings. But what we can do is work with what arises within. So equanimity is a pathway. It's a way of being present, and we can cultivate a seed on our ongoing journey of really investigating ourselves through our practice and working with whatever arises moment by moment if we can. So it might be that we work with moments where we can reflect. For example, how do we develop more equanimity in life? And Christina Feldman was saying in her book that when you lose equanimity in life, it's a time to reflect. So as a nurse, we spend a lot of time reflecting on situations where, what could we do differently next time? And I think for me, this is very similar. Perhaps at a time where I've had overwhelming fear or anger, or I've lost it, for example. I'm very pleased to say that doesn't happen very often these days with practice, but when I'm triggered, those moments I can sit and reflect on perhaps what triggered me or what created the wave of fear. And then what do I need to do in between now and potentially the next time I'm triggered in that way? What practice might I need to do to bring about more equanimity? So it's asking that question. What do I need to do after a moment of fear, after a moment of anger? And really put that into our daily practice and making it a daily practice to work with. And then the next time the trigger is there. We can recognize when the wave begins, and hopefully our practice brings us to a place of more balance and equanimity in life, that we don't become the wave, but we're much more of the ocean potentially. So reflection can be a really good way of working out what we need to practice. And time doesn't stand still. We're growing, we're learning, we're cultivating our practices and practicing regularly to be able to work with change in life and not resisting change. And equanimity is a really wonderful way of being able to meet change that is part of everyday life. But like a lot of things we practice, it's not always easy. What is it not? And I think it's quite important to just touch on what equanimity is not. And it's not suddenly having this sublime life with really peaceful moments. That would be unrealistic and unreal. It's not disengaging with the world, but it's about being less reactive in certain situations and maybe just a little bit more balanced. So as I've mentioned already, rather than reacting to fear when it arises, can we, or in any moment of strong emotion, remind ourselves of the greater and wider perspective? And I know Angie talked about that also. And this can be the gift of practice, to see a bigger picture rather than the narrow focus that can come when we're really caught up in strong emotion. It's also not passively observing or being cold in the world, but it's not grasping of the good, and it's not pushing away or aversion of the bad. It's about bringing a mindful awareness to that wave that we're experiencing. So the moments we feel most agitated, most lost, can we open to being with that in the moment, with care, with kindness, with compassion, and more balance? So Christina Feldman, in her book, has a lovely passage that I just wanted to share with everybody. A student told me of her early years practicing meditation in the Himalayan foothills. In search of a peaceful mind, she found a secluded hut on the mountainside. She moved further up the mountain. Sorry, let me start again. In search of a peaceful mind, she found a secluded hut on the mountainside, but finding that the passing locals with their animals were too intrusive, she moved further up the mountain. She wanted to be more secluded. Here she found that the wildlife interrupted her meditation and was obstructing the peace she sought for. So she decided to move again and found a more secluded, abandoned animal shelter and moved in. Placing blankets over the windows and finally settling into a meditation to find peace, she was finding that that really wasn't happening, because the tin roof meant that the monkey tribes were playing all over it and making lots of noise. So finding herself outside berating and shouting at the monkeys, it finally dawned on her that the peace could never be built upon avoiding life or endlessly endeavoring to control the uncontrollable. And this is, I guess, what we mean by being able to view things differently, that the simple things in life, like Faye talked about earlier, being with that simplicity of when is enough okay? Can I be in my meditation with the sounds around me, with noises that might be disturbing? Can I let that come and go and wash over me? So the path of equanimity asks us to question whether it's the events in life that are disturbing us or our reactions to them. And this is a really good question to ask. And also in our practice, we think about life, you know, as an unstoppable flow of events. It's a bit like a river that emerges and flows, and there are stretches of calm, there are stretches of white water and turbulence. We sometimes get stuck in whirlpools. There may be edges that we fall over, and the river, you know, doesn't stop no more than life stops. So can we meet life with a little bit more balance where possible? And also in the information around equanimity, we talk about things like the winds of the world. So there are moments for all of us in life where we have praise and blame. We have success and we have failure. We have pleasure and we have pain. And gain and loss. And these are woven into every human existence. So when we're seeking out that quieter hut to sit and meditate, life becomes increasingly difficult when we're in the pursuit of pleasure. So we can then become increasingly intolerant of difficulty if we are constantly searching for that pleasure or that perfect state. And that can often bind us to a life of, potentially a life of anxiety or agitation. So the winds, the 8 worldly winds, are constant in life, and they're constantly there, and we're all experiencing them. So the mountain meditation, which we'll do very shortly, is the mountains often unshaken by the storms. And can we embrace that in ourselves, that the wise person practicing equanimity in life can be steady amidst the 8 worldly winds? And it's always a good reminder, the statement, and it's helped me through many difficult moments, that this too shall pass. And you know, I spent 11 days feeling incredibly unwell, and then there was a change, and things have started to improve. But I'm by no means well, but I am beginning to turn a corner, and I am hugely grateful for that and appreciative of that. So this too is passing, albeit slowly, and it's good to just keep that in our hearts as well. Jack Cornfield would say that equanimity is a wishing well for everybody without trying to change, control, or manipulate. And Jack also says it's about finding peace in the midst of change in life, and not removing the storm, but caring for life in a compassionate way through the storm. How do we move from a reactive to a calmer life? I think it's good to know what waves stir you up in life. What are you triggered by? And as Faye said earlier in the day when she shared that information, that sometimes that's where the learning is, when we are willing to be with what our triggers are, and what from our triggers are pushing our buttons, and what are we missing in life? What are we needing in that moment? And how are you when you're reactive? And do you lose an ability to practice in that moment, or can you practice in that moment? Rick Hanson talks a bit about equanimity as well. And he says it's not reacting to our reaction to things. And that's a really important one too, because sometimes if we have a strong reaction, we might then react to how we've been in that moment. So working with our own reactions and seeing if we can not react to our own reactions. So Rick Hanson talks about remembering that everything's impermanent, the impermanent nature of all things. And he reminds us of three things. And he talks about spaciousness. Can we look out into the horizon when we're caught in a wave? It's important to be able to look out at the bigger picture, to have a bird's eye view of a situation and look much more widely rather than maybe the narrowness that comes with a difficulty in life. So can we look and recognize the context of a situation? And can we create the space to maybe step away and pause? And then we might be able to go back with more balance and equanimity. So the first thing is spaciousness that Rick talks about. And then also peacefulness and contentment would be the second thing he talks about, and also love. And it's that ability to know when is enough, as Faye mentioned this morning. And that's a really good question to ask, I would say. Or are we on that treadmill of wanting more? Cravings, for example. Can we rest in what Rick says is the green zone of equanimity, of that feeling of enoughness? We have enough at this point. And can we also then marinate in that? And then the third thing he talks about is confidence. Can we go into the wave with confidence that we have our practice to help us hold what's here and to meet what's here in a more responsive way? So spaciousness, much wider view of a situation, the sense of enoughness and contentment and confidence in our practice. So I think I'm going to stop there and move into a practice. So maybe we could just take a few moments to stretch and move in any way that you need to between this and the practice. So just take a moment to do whatever feels right. Maybe just taking a few moments to find your posture. I'd like to guide us through mountain meditation. And as you're finding your posture, receiving the sound of the bell. Finding a posture that feels upright and alert and supported. A posture that feels complete and whole and dignified, supported, also at ease. And as we find our posture for this practice, taking a moment to connect to our intention to be mindful, to open to a more mindful life through the waves of the ups and downs, and to cultivate the conditions for equanimity to arise. And spending a moment connecting to how this might be beneficial. How might it be helpful to cultivate a mind with a little bit more balance and equanimity? And letting intention and motivation be felt in the heart, in our being. And then turning towards the breath and beginning to feel the breathing body. The flow of the in-breath and out-breath. Noticing the natural rhythm and flow, the sensations. Simply tuning into the natural breath within the body. And you can count or use a phrase if that helps to stay with the breath, maybe lengthening it just slightly as we settle in our usual way. Being with our breathing body, aware of the mind and any busyness or calmness of the mind. The invitation is always to come back to the breath. So I'd like to invite you now to bring an image into the mind of a mountain. So it can be any mountain at all. one that you've climbed, one that you've seen, perhaps one that you've seen on TV or in a magazine or book. It can be an imagined mountain. Seeing if we can bring the image of the mountain into the mind's eye. So we're imagining this mountain, we're feeling this mountain, we're observing this mountain. And beginning to notice the details, the tip of the mountain, perhaps in the cloud or a clear sky. The slopes, maybe smooth slopes or plateaus. The mountain may be covered in snow or covered in trees. Just noticing its overall shape, noticing its size, its beauty, its massiveness. Tuning in to this image of the mountain. And noticing how it's rooted deeply into the earth. So just spending a moment feeling and experiencing the mountain in our mind's eye. And if there isn't a clear image, it might be a felt sense, and that's also fine. Just whatever you're experiencing as we really tune into this mountain in our mind. And maybe we could invite the mountain into our own body, into our being, so that we and the mountain become one. Just imagining that that can happen, that we become more like the mountain, we become the mountain. But in our posture right now, we are rooted on the earth. The peak of the mountain is the top of the head. And the slopes, the shoulders, the arms, with the hands resting down on the legs. And imagining too that we can take on the qualities of the mountain, this grounded, rooted, stable mountain. That we are stable in our practice here. Connected to the earth, supported by the earth. Taking on its majesty, its beauty. Its ability to be still, unchanged. So the mountain experiences change around it. The weather changes from storms to sunshine. clear blue sky to clouds. The mountain remains stable, rooted, grounded, no matter what the weather changing around it. The seasons change, moving from the beautiful colors of autumn, perhaps the mountains covered in trees that are golden with autumn colors. And it changes into winter where the leaves fall and the trees are bare, maybe covered in ice and snow, cold, strong winds, storms, but also crisp, calm days. And that changes into spring, new life, new growth, and into summer, the warmth and heat and greenness of the summer. But the mountain remains stable, strong, majestic, no matter what the weather, no matter what the season. And people visit the mountain. They come to see this beautiful mountain from a distance, maybe close up. But whether seen or unseen, the mountain remains itself, whole, beautiful, rooted and grounded. And as we sit and experience this mountain, we too have things going on in life. Moments of difficulty, perhaps stormy days, days of challenge. But also we have days of joy, moments of joy. So just like the mountain with the stormy days and the calm, crisp, clear days, the mountain remains unchanged and grounded and rooted and balanced. Perhaps we could take on these qualities too, being rooted and balanced as we experience the storms of our life. The difficult days and the joyful days. The challenging days and the peaceful days. Maybe the mountain can teach us to bring the quality of balance to whatever we're experiencing in life. Can we meet what we experience in life with more balance, with more equanimity? Just as the mountain remains calm and still and rooted with whatever's going on around, can we embrace the same? Can we cultivate this ability to be with and bring the strength of the mountain within us? The mountain has a strength. And can we imagine that strength is our own, that we have that strength within us? Through the practice of the mountain, we can cultivate this strength of the mountain and hold it within us. Feel it within us. Our lives change moment by moment, breath by breath. Our body changes. We get older. Our appearance changes. We experience the changing weather in our lives. And can we hold the qualities of the mountain no matter what we're facing? Stability, balance and equanimity. Rooted, grounded, strong, beautiful. So pausing to open to the potential of the mountain within us. To know that we can practice bringing the image of the mountain and the qualities that it brings, bringing that into us whenever we need it. That this practice is always here for us at any time. And maybe we could let go of the image now of the mountain and rest in our breathing body. Supported by the earth, connected, deeply connected. Coming back to the natural breath flowing and the movement and sensation. And maybe appreciating the time we've given to cultivate the conditions for a little more balance and equanimity in life. We maybe consider how we might take that forward into our lives to help us deal with the highs and lows, to support others too. Let's dedicate the benefits of practice to others in our lives. Taking a moment to receive the sound of the bell as we approach the end of our practice together. So thank you everyone for your practice. We're going to go into breakout rooms now, which Christine is going to organize for me. That would be lovely. I was thinking 10 minutes, please, Christine. That would be super, to give people time just to share anything that came up for them. Equally, if you'd like to stay and journal, just be in your own space, completely fine. So maybe 10 minutes, and then that gives us time for a little sharing at the end.
Okay, and maybe like before, if you end up on your own in a room, please just stay there and I'll do the magic. Hopefully it will go smoothly. Here's your invitation.